The year was 1939. The drums of war had begun to sound, yet the dance was yet to begin. An eerie calm settled over Europe, a deceptive tranquility before the storm. This was the period known as the Phony War, a time of war without warfare, a time of waiting, watching, and worrying. In the east, Germany had flexed its military might, invading Poland with a terrifying show of force. The world watched in shock as Poland fell, consumed by the Nazi war machine. In response, Britain and France had declared war, drawing a line in the sand. Yet, despite these declarations, the Western Front remained quiet, a stark contrast to the violence unfolding in the east. The maps of Europe at this time tell a strange tale. In the east, the borders were shifting, transforming under the weight of German aggression. But in the west, the lines remained unchanged, a seeming stalemate between forces that had yet to meet in battle. Across the globe, the tension was palpable. The world held its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. Yet, day after day, the expected storm failed to break. The sirens remained silent, the trenches empty, the guns silent. It was as if the war had forgotten the Western Front. Meanwhile, life continued surprisingly normally, albeit under the shadow of the impending conflict. People went about their daily routines, always under the watchful eye of propaganda posters urging them to dig for victory. Soldiers waited in their trenches, training, preparing for a battle that seemed increasingly elusive. This was the strange paradox of the Phony War, a time of war, yet peace, a time of preparation, yet inaction, a time of fear, yet normality. It was a time of waiting, of anticipation, of uncertainty. It was the calm before the storm. While the world watched with bated breath, the Western Front remained eerily quiet. But this was just the calm before the storm, a deceptive peace that would soon be shattered, giving way to the true horrors of World War II. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, life went on in this strange period of waiting. The world stage was set, the actors in their places, but the script was yet to be written. The Phony War, as it was aptly named, was a paradoxical time of both anticipation and normalcy, of preparation and pause. On the front lines, soldiers were trapped in a monotonous cycle of training and waiting. They honed their skills, drilled routines and fortified defenses, all the while knowing that the true test of their mettle was still to come. The trenches became their homes, the muddy walls their constant companions. Yet the expected onslaught remained a distant threat, a spectre looming over their everyday existence. Back home, civilians were caught in a similar limbo. The war had been declared, but its effects were yet to be felt in their daily lives. Propaganda posters lined the streets, shouting slogans of resilience and victory. "Dig for victory," they implored, a call to arms for those left behind. Yet the shops remained open, children went to school, and life in many ways carried on as usual. There was a sense of surrealism that pervaded this period. The world was at war, yet there was no war to be seen. Instead, there was a strange silence, a hush that hung over Europe, as if the continent itself was holding its breath, bracing for the storm to come. And amid this quiet, the undercurrent of anxiety and fear grew stronger each passing day. The radio broadcasts, the hushed whispers, the flurry of diplomatic activity all hinted at the inevitable escalation. People could only speculate about when and where the first blow would fall, but the consensus was clear. It was not a question of if, but when. And so, the world held its breath, caught in the grip of a war that was yet to arrive. The Phony War was a tableau of suspense, a stage set for a play whose curtain was yet to rise. But behind the facade of normalcy, the gears of war were grinding, and the world was inching closer to a conflict unlike any it had ever seen. Then, in the spring of 1940, the storm broke. The Phony War was over. The deceptive calm that had hung over Europe was shattered by the roaring engines of German war machines. This was not a storm of rain and thunder, but one of steel and fire, a tempest of terror that would engulf the world. Germany, unsatisfied with her conquests in the east, turned her gaze to the west. The first to fall were Denmark and Norway. Seized in a matter of weeks, these nations were the initial casualties of a new kind of warfare, the Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. This strategy, marked by rapid, concentrated attacks intended to create a state of shock and disarray, was brutally effective. As the world watched in stunned silence, the German war machine rolled on, unstoppable. The Low Countries, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, were the next to face the onslaught. Despite their desperate resistance, they too fell under the weight of the German advance. Then came France, the bulwark of the Western Front. The Maginot Line, a formidable system of fortifications, was believed to be impregnable. But the German forces simply bypassed it, sweeping through the Ardennes forest, thought to be impassable by mechanized forces. This audacious move took the Allies by surprise, and in 6 weeks, the French defenses crumbled. The speed and ferocity of these attacks were unlike anything the world had seen. The Phony War, with its strange, anxious calm, had given way to a conflict of unimaginable scale. The trenches, once filled with bored, waiting soldiers, were now scenes of chaos and desperation. The air raid sirens, once an ominous reminder of the war to come, now screamed a terrifying reality. The storm had broken. The Phony War was over. As defenses crumbled and nations fell, the Phony War gave way to a conflict of unimaginable scale. Europe was now in the grip of a full-scale war, a war that would change the course of history forever. The illusion of peace was shattered, the Phony War was over, and the true face of World War II emerged. The lull that had once hung over the Western Front was no more, replaced by the thunderous roar of tanks, the cacophonous symphony of artillery, and the piercing screams of air raid sirens. France, the proud nation that had stood defiant, was now under the heel of the Nazi regime. Its cities, once bustling with life, were now haunted by the spectre of occupation. The Eiffel Tower, a symbol of French ingenuity and pride, stood as a silent witness to this grim reality. The fall of France was swift and brutal, a stark contrast to the Phony War that had preceded it. Across the English Channel, the British forces faced a desperate situation. Encircled by the German army at Dunkirk, they were staring at the face of annihilation. Yet, in this moment of despair, a glimmer of hope emerged. A flotilla of hundreds of civilian vessels, in a heroic act of solidarity, braved the treacherous waters and ferocious enemy fire to evacuate their trapped compatriots. This event, known as the Miracle of Dunkirk, was a beacon of resilience in a time of overwhelming darkness. The transition from the Phony War to full-scale warfare was sudden and jarring. The world had been lulled into a false sense of security, only to be awakened by the brutal reality of conflict. The Phony War had served as a deceptive mask, hiding the true face of the impending storm. The Phony War was a chilling prelude to the horrors that lay ahead. The storm had arrived, and the world would never be the same. The coming years would bear witness to human resilience in the face of adversity, to acts of unimaginable cruelty and incredible heroism. The Phony War had ended, and Europe was plunged into the true horrors of World War II.